Hey cuties, I'm Miles Sexton, a content creator, activist, and loud and proud disruptor of the norm. On Our Private Bits, we talk about the things and people that don't get talked about enough, or at all. Trust me, as a sober, HIV-positive, non-binary person, I would know. Join me as I chat with people in my life and from around the world whose stories deserve to be heard. Maybe you'll learn something new, and you will definitely LOL. Our Private Bits is also part of the Acast Curator Network. All right, cuties. Today on Our Private Bits, we have Harrison Browne joining. He was the first out transgender athlete to play professional hockey within the National Women's Hockey League. He also is an actor and has been in films like Nancy Drew, Why the Last Man, and Murdoch Mysteries. He also is a filmmaker and soon-to-be author. Want to say hi?
Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so happy we get to connect.
Yeah.
I feel like I saw you on One Queen Five Queers like forever ago. And I was like, who is this person? I was just like so intrigued by you and your story. And I like creeped you on Instagram and was like, I need to connect with this person. And so I'm so excited that I finally get to have you on the podcast and we get to know each other, I guess, a little bit more today.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that and seeing you also in the second season. That was so great. And like Brooklyn Heights, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So amazing.
How was One Queen Five Queers for you? Like, was that your first time that you've done something like that or?
It was the first time that I'd done something like with like a drag queen and
Yes.
in that kind of like heightened space. I think being an athlete and coming out through that, it was more like hoity-toity like interviews and stuff. So this was just so amazing to just be in an environment with Brooklyn where she brought like so much energy.
Totally.
But yeah, no, it was super fun. It was super fun. Such a fun experience being the first season too. So yeah, it was great.
It was so cool. I was so happy that the show, I feel like, went in the direction that it did, where it was just like, I feel like it was really having a lot of conversations that didn't get had before, you know, and like really shared, I think, a lot of people's stories that I wished, more mainstream media would like pick up on. So, I think the show definitely inspired this podcast too.
Oh,
so,
yeah, cool.
I was just for me anyway, it was like the first time that I was really able to like publicly, I think, share a bit of my journey like on such a big level, So I think it was really, really cool. So yeah, thanks for being here today. So I guess, I know sports are something that is such a big part of your life. And I guess like I'm curious, like what growing up, like were sports always something that you were sort of involved in? Like what was that journey for you?
Yeah, like sports was such an integral part of my life. Like I think when I first started like skating, I was put into like figure skating and things like that with my sister. But I fell in love with the more violent version with hockey.
Yeah.
but I tried like a bunch of different sports. I was a soccer player before that. I think that was my first love was soccer.
Yes.
And then I started to try hockey. And then like every good Canadian hockey player, you had to kind of had to pick which sport. So I had to really focus on if I wanted to pick soccer, if I wanted to pick hockey. So I picked hockey and I was just obsessed with it. I just ate, slept, breathed hockey. And I think looking back on it, it was definitely an escape from having to think of like gender identity in a way. Like, I think like when you're like 6 or 7 or 8, you kind of don't really think about that. But as I got older, I just realized that I really identified with being an athlete. It's not a gendered term.
Totally.
And I think like just being like, oh, I'm a hockey player instead of I'm a girl or I'm a boy. And it just played a really big part in finding, I think, acceptance for myself too. And just being surrounded by teammates. I think especially hockey, it's such an LGBTQ plus friendly sport on the women's side.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, on the women's side. Like every team that I was on, like past like 16 on, was like half the team was gay.
Okay,
half
cool.
the team was straight. So I was just filled with like all of this eclectic sexuality, gender identity space within the women's locker room. And it was a space for me to come out. Really.
That's so cool. Yeah. So it did feel safe for you.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, very safe.
Okay. Was there ever like moments like within it where it didn't feel safe or like?
Yeah, I think when you're younger, like 12, 13, I think everybody's trying to figure things out for themselves.
Totally.
And that's a time, I think, when people really gravitate to trying to be something that maybe they're not, or they're really copying things in the media. So I think like 12, 13, around there, people were saying like things like, that's so gay, and calling each other like the F word and things like that in the dressing room. but it was a women girls dominated space.
Yes.
So there was some uncomfortability with it. But I never felt unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool because I think like hockey is like one of those, I guess, like sports in terms of like what you also have to wear too. It's like it is definitely more of like a masculine, I think, like presenting, I guess, like in terms of like the attire part of it too.
Mhm.
Like, do you feel was that a part of like maybe something that you gravitated towards?
I think so. Like,
Yeah.
I think when you start out younger, you don't have to show up to games in dress clothes.
Yeah.
But as you get higher
Mm-hmm.
in what you're playing, if you're playing rep, if you're playing like AAA, junior,
Yes.
things like that, you have to show up to the game dressed up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And for the most part, girls actually came dressed up as the boys would.
Yes.
Where we would have like jackets, we would have collared shirts,
Yes.
and we would wear ties.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. It's a whole other world for me. So
Yeah, I haven't thought about it in a while. But
Yeah.
yeah, people would show up in ties, and I think that was actually one of the first spaces that I was able to express my gender identity in a way that aligned. And then I also think with hockey too, like the actual playing of it, you have equipment on.
Yes.
You're putting basically armor on. It was something that I didn't have to think about my body. I didn't have to feel it. I didn't have to look down to a chest. I looked down to like a breastplate
literally
of armor.
Yes.
So I think that in itself too, I felt just very strong and very masculine in that space. Yeah.
I love it. You know, like I grew up in the East Coast of Canada, and you know, so hockey is like such a big thing out there. And you know, my parents were both like, they played for like the Canadian team for broomball. So like, even though it's a different, like not exactly hockey, but like they were very like big into broomball. Like my dad still goes to the Worlds like every year. It's like bananas. And it's like, and so like, you know, my parents like really were like, you know, these professional athletes, and like tried to force me so hard to like into sports.
Right.
And like, I enjoyed it, but it was never, I always felt like for me, it was such a masculine like space that I had such a hard time like feeling comfortable in it, because I was just like, my femininity was definitely something that was so much more present. And I'll never forget like my first day going to like hockey with my dad, and I was just like, I just wanted to like figure skate because I wanted to wear one of the glittery outfits. And I was like fighting with my dad, being like, why can't I wear like a sparkly outfit like the figure skaters wear? And he's like, no, for hockey you have to wear this. And I just like remember the whole practice, I just like kept going over to like the glass, like to keep the pucks from going into the crowd, and I was like blowing on the glass and like drawing pictures.
Yeah.
So I like couldn't, I was like, I this is just like not working for me. And then I finally convinced my parents to put me in gymnastics, because that was like the most like masculine compromise that like they could get for me. And I was like, but I think that sports, there is still this like, I think there is a connection to sports with our own like identities and who we are and how we express ourselves.
Yeah.
And I don't think people like maybe think about that as much, maybe, or that I think there is like this like parallel in terms of like what people gravitate towards. So
yeah, no, I'd agree. I think we just had definite opposite
totally.
desires. My mom was putting me in the frilly dresses, and I was like, I want this hockey skate where I can hit people.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's definitely a way to express and to think about your body and how it moves and what it looks like, and in a way that you don't really realize until you're older looking back on it. I think that you're just like, oh, that's the reason why I gravitated to that. That's the reason why I wanted to wear that, because I'm expressing myself and who I am inside through sport. I think it is a really great tool for that. If it's masculine, if it's feminine.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's so true. Like when I, you know, in like gymnastics competitions, I'd have to wear like I guess like what you would think of like a women's one-piece bathing suit, and then I would put shorts over top of it. And I remember like, I couldn't believe that I got to wear this, and my parents couldn't say anything. And I was just like, I remember like every single time like someone came over to the house, I'd be like, do you want to see my gymnastics outfit? Because I would just like have to try to find an excuse to like wear something that I thought was so feminine. And like, I don't know, I'll like never forget that, because I think that was like such an important piece, I think, of like me unapologetically getting to embrace like I think my femininity as a child, when I wasn't really able to in any other situation. So yeah. What did you have like, was there an article of clothing for you at all? Or like equipment?
I don't know. I think I just liked the gender neutrality of all the equipment. Like there was one time where there's not really many gendered things except for like a jock and
Yes.
a Jill.
Yeah.
A Jill is like the
Yeah,
female
okay.
version for it. And then there's like, so you have your chest protector or your shoulder pads.
Mhm.
And there are some like feminized ones that have
Okay.
like little pockets for
Okay.
breasts.
Yeah.
Where my dad got me that once, and I was like, I just remember feeling really like I really did not like that.
Yes.
So I can think of one that I didn't like. But no, I think with hockey, I think I just liked that nothing was gendered in that way. Yeah.
I love it.
Mhm.
I think that's something that's beautiful about it too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. So then, like, as you're going on your professional kind of journey, I feel like, you know, getting to play on that level of like playing for hockey, like that's so surreal. But like, how did you manage, I guess, like your own identity as you were sort of like going through this like professional journey? Because I'm sure there must have been some push and pull, like kind of there of like of deciding whether or not you're going to transition or not.
Yeah. I think as I got higher with hockey, the more the women's side got interwoven with my identity.
Yeah.
And I think I found like trans men on YouTube when I was 14.
Okay.
Like I knew I was struggling with
YouTube.
good old YouTube. I know. But I knew I was struggling with my gender identity, but
Mhm.
I just was like a female athlete.
Yes.
And I saw like these trans men on YouTube documenting what testosterone did to their body, documenting like their top surgery experiences. And I just remember feeling like I really needed that.
Yeah.
But it felt like such a distant future for me because I was a hockey player.
Yes.
And because I was on track to, I think at that time, like I was training very heavily. I made the under 18 team for Hockey Canada.
Wow.
And
that's so amazing.
yeah, it was so much fun. And we went to Stockholm, Sweden. We lost to the States, but that's okay.
You went, but that's
I went,
yes.
yes. And then I got a Division I scholarship to go to NCAA.
That's incredible.
Because professional women's hockey was not in North America was not an option when I first started.
Yeah,
so like
fair.
the main goal for women hockey players was to get a scholarship.
Mhm.
And that was like the main thing on my mind. And there's anti-doping protocol in the NCAA. So I couldn't take testosterone.
Right.
So I had to really just put my gender identity and my desires aside and just kind of go through life as somebody that I wasn't because I needed to fit into this hockey bubble that I didn't think that I could be my authentic self and also be a hockey player excelling on the women's side. And I didn't think people weren't socially transitioning at that time, that I didn't know anybody that was doing that. And I didn't think anybody would take me seriously if I wasn't on testosterone, if my voice didn't drop, if I didn't have facial hair. I don't have much, but it's getting there now.
Got a good mustache.
Yes, thank you. But I just was like, I'm just gonna have to wait until I retire to come out.
Yes.
And I just kept it a secret. But then the higher I got in hockey, the more media attention there was, and the more your rosters were publicized, the more that pronouns were used in like maybe like the school papers and things like that. And I just saw that more and more and more, and it was just becoming harder and harder. And I felt like hockey was my escape, and it was a place for me to explore my gender identity. And then it started to turn into a cage where I had to fit into the women's side of the sport that I was playing. And it became really hard in college. Like it was really hard for me to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel at times. For
Absolutely.
Sure.
I think, trying to battle like that, you know, both parts of like trying to honor, I think, who you are on the inside, but also like something that brings you so much joy, you know, for the most part.
Yeah.
I can't imagine
and like
trying to make a decision.
Yeah. And like I was like, I only have a certain amount of time to play hockey, and like there's a finite like 4 years to play college. And so thinking about giving that up, losing my scholarship to just physically transition, it just was not on the table for me.
Totally. Yeah. So what made the final decision?
I came out to my teammates in college. Like I went to the University of Maine and I came out to my teammates there. So I started to socially transition only in my hockey space.
Yes.
Like my parents didn't know, nobody knew.
Okay.
And it was in the dressing room, because you're called your last name in hockey.
Okay.
So
that's cool.
I wasn't called my feminine name before. So there was just a nice place where my last name's Brown. So I was just called Brownie.
Totally.
So I was like, hey, I'm still the same Brownie, but like, can you just use male pronouns?
Yeah.
Everyone's like, yeah, for sure. And then it was a space where I could also try out different names too. Like I'd be like, okay, I think I want to try Hunter. I like Harrison. There was a time where I really liked the Hunger Games, and I was like,
Yes.
oh, maybe I'll try PETA. That
Oh
last, it
my
was so
God.
embarrassing. It was so
That's
embarrassing.
hilarious.
But I tried that for like 2 weeks, and I was
Yeah.
like, no, this doesn't work. But I found Harrison and
Yes.
through hockey, and I think what changed, it was just the compounding media attention, then especially with the NWHL
Yes.
being this big. It was the first paid league in
Yeah.
North America ever.
Wow.
So when I made one of those teams, I made the
Yes.
Buffalo Beauts, and the media attention was crazy. I played my first season under the wrong name and everything like that. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I just have to. I don't know when I'm going to be able to physically transition, but I can't keep living this lie, and I can't keep like having my sporting identity and my identity to the outside world
Yes.
being so different. And so I decided to come out my second season playing. But yeah, it made me want to quit hockey.
Yeah.
It did, but I still loved this sport, and I wanted to find a way to fit in and to keep playing. And it was to socially transition and just to understand that maybe people won't understand me.
Yes.
And even if I don't look what they think I should look, to have a he, him pronoun or something
Yes.
like that, it's my own comfort and it's my own life.
Mhm.
And I think it comes with aging too.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
I graduated college, and I came out when I was maybe 22 publicly,
Mhm.
I think was when I came out. So getting that confidence, getting that life experience. But I really gained the confidence through hockey and being accepted by my teammates as a man
Yes.
within a women's space.
So they were like
they were-
quite
yeah.
supportive?
Oh yeah, they were very supportive. The only thing that happened
Yeah.
was I started to grow out my armpit hair, and I started to
Okay.
grow out my leg hair, and one of my teammates was really hard on me for it.
Oh, no.
Because hockey, you make fun of each other
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time. It's the
For
love
sure.
language.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's called chirping, and so
Yeah.
she would always make fun of my armpit hair, and I'm like, you wouldn't make fun of a cis man's armpit hair.
Totally.
And it's like I had to explain that in a way, and it was like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I understand. So it was just like some learning curves and some corrections. I think also language within sports too is very gendered. Like, let's go ladies, let's go
Yes.
girls.
Yeah.
And the team having to kind of work around that too.
Mhm.
And coaches having to work around that too.
Yeah.
Was a learning tool for everybody, but everybody was trying their best, and mistakes happened.
Yeah,
But
of course.
yeah, it was just a really nice space to feel supported and to feel like people genuinely wanted to understand me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Did you have to like really like lead a lot of that education like for the people around you, or like did the people like take initiatives to like try to learn themselves?
Yeah. So I think when I came out, it was like college. I came out probably like 2013.
Mhm.
So, oh my gosh, that's so long ago now. Oh my gosh, that's 11 years
Yeah.
ago. But I came out publicly in 2016. So that's
Mhm.
still a little while ago. And
Yes.
I think education about trans topics and
Yeah.
non-binary topics was just maybe in its infancy.
Mhm.
So I didn't even know how to properly educate. I didn't
yeah.
even know what I needed. So there was times where I had to stand up for myself, but especially with the NWHL,
Yes.
I really leaned on the captain of my team. Her name's Emily. Well, her name was Emily Falzer there.
Mhm.
She's now Emily Matheson. And she was the captain of the Buffalo Beauts. And I was like, I really want to come out to the league's front office. I don't know how to do this. And so she did it for me. So I leaned on a lot of my teammates,
Yeah.
and my teammates really had my back too. Like if somebody made like a ladies slip up,
Okay.
somebody would be like, and gentlemen, like,
Yeah.
and to be like, we got to support Brownie.
Yes.
So people had each other's backs. I had my back.
That's so amazing.
Yeah. So when that became too exhausting for me, I did really lean on. I really did lean on like the leaders and like the
Yeah.
people that I was closest to on the team to do it for me, because it's exhausting to have to advocate for yourself constantly.
Of course.
So yeah, I leaned on my teammates a lot, and they were so great.
Totally. Well, it's very much, I feel like with sports, it's like that pack mentality,
Yeah.
that is there. So I'm so happy to hear that everyone was so like on board, with
Mhm.
that, because I'm sure it's like, we look at it now of how people are having just such a hard time with like just pronouns, which is such
Yeah.
a like, not, it's a pretty simple thing, I think. Like,
Mhm.
so it's just like, it just fills my heart getting to hear that like people were so on board with like helping to like include that regardless of like what the gender, like the gendered of the sport had to
Mhm.
be, like, I
Yeah.
think that that's so cool to hear that. And I don't think people would expect that. I definitely
No.
wouldn't.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it was great. And there was part of me that was like, oh, it's such a burden. I don't want them to have to
Mhm.
change their language from
Yes.
ladies to team and like
Yeah.
gender neutralize them. It's so annoying that everybody has to,
Yeah.
but you're right, it's not a big deal.
No.
And it's just something to make somebody more comfortable and
Yeah,
to be there for your teammates. So yeah, it just makes sense that they did it. It's not a
absolutely.
burden.
Do you think it would be different for someone, like, who played on, like, the men's team? Like
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Because like, as we were talking about, like gender roles, gender
Mhm.
identity through sports, women's hockey in itself, you're already breaking down barriers
Yes.
as a female or somebody that is put on the gender roles
Yeah,
of what femininity
totally.
means. You're breaking that barrier by playing such a masculine, violent
Mhm.
sport already. So, um, definitely I can't speak to the other side, but we all hear so many stories about what's happening in the men's locker room
Yes.
and hazing and things like
Mhm.
that. And there's a huge reckoning that needs to happen on the men's side. So yeah, it's definitely not the same. But I think conversations are being had, and I think hockey is really going through a big culture
Yes,
shift. It
totally.
has to. Like,
It
everybody's become privy to it with all the stuff that's coming out. So
yes.
there is a shift in mentality that is happening, but toxic masculinity is
Mhm.
still very prevalent these
For
days.
sure.
So it's going to take a while, but it's moving.
It is, it is. So, like, I guess, like, for you then, when did you, like, stop playing hockey? Like, what was like, like what was that like, I guess, like, when you finished?
Yeah, so I finished when I was 24.
Okay.
I just won back-to-back national
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
championships,
so
so that
good.
was nice. I went out on top,
Yes.
and I definitely needed a break for my
Yeah.
own self. Like, I'd been playing hockey every day for 16 years,
Yes.
so I just needed to figure out who I was without the
Mhm.
sport
Yes.
and step away and just become Harrison.
Totally.
The We call it a NARP, a non-athlete regular person. So
Okay.
I was Harrison the NARP
I love it.
for a bit. But then I started to miss hockey.
Yeah.
I took about like a few months and then I was like, oh, I actually really miss being in this team
Mhm.
environment. And I felt really lost for
Yeah.
a while because I was told what to eat, what to do, where to
Yes.
be. And then I just had this blank slate where I had
Whoa.
nothing. And so it was a
Yeah, like, no
pretty
structure.
dark, yeah, it was a
Yeah.
pretty dark time. And I was physically transitioning and like there was just so much change in my life. Um, but then I wanted to get back into hockey and I started to go back with like my female friends and go
Mhm.
back into that space. But I was getting like looks from people that weren't in the change room, but like
Yes.
watching me go into these change
Yeah.
rooms. And I was just like, I don't feel connected to this space anymore.
Mhm.
And I also started to not feel connected to like my queer community
Yeah.
because I was a lesbian for a really long
Yes.
time. And then I just felt I'm now a retired lesbian.
Yeah.
And I just felt this huge imposter syndrome within that space.
Mhm.
And as we mentioned, men's hockey is not the most accepting
Totally.
space. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to fit. I didn't think I could go into a men's league because hockey is such a nude sport.
Yeah.
The locker room is like one of the only locker rooms that it's like a prison shower.
Yeah.
Everybody can see each other.
Totally.
There's no curtains, there's
Yeah.
no
It's
stalls.
so interesting.
So this sport that like I was a professional in that was my entire life, I felt like I didn't belong in anymore. So I still actually haven't played on a men's side. I still
Mhm.
haven't gone back into uh organized hockey.
Yeah.
I've just played a couple tournaments here and there, but I played with an all trans
Yes,
team.
I love
Yeah,
that.
so that was really fun. Getting back into that, but I do miss the consistency of it, and I do miss like being part of like a team that's more than just a weekend.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm still figuring that out, and it's still tough.
What do you think, like, needs to change in order to, like, make these spaces, like, more inclusive? Especially, I guess, on the men's side.
I think it's just really being conscious of language
Mhm.
because I played in a charity tournament, and I was in a men's locker room.
Yes.
I just didn't shower afterwards and just
Yeah.
felt a little like, "Ugh." But I was filled with like 30, 40-year-old men that were very nice.
Yeah.
Nobody was there wasn't like a air of misogyny around.
Mhm.
but somebody just casually dropped the F-bomb in like as saying that somebody on the other team was annoying them. And I was just like, that's homophobic.
Yeah.
This is not an LGBTQ plus friendly place. I don't know what you're going to say if you see my top surgery scars.
Totally.
I don't want to go into a shower when I have a different body than the rest of the people there.
Sure.
So I was shocked. But I think it's just being really conscious of language and calling people out and being good allies, because I didn't feel comfortable to make a stand. I wasn't going to do it. But yeah, and just education at the grassroots. I think like if we can get kids early on and get them exposed to different types of people, to different ways of life. I think with hockey on the women's side as well, it is a predominantly white, wealthy sport. On the men's side, it's a predominantly white, wealthy, heterosexual side. So you're just surrounded by people that are the same as you, and you're not exposed. So anything different, you're going to fear it.
Yes.
But if kids can grow up playing in not such a homogenized environment, I think it's really going to shift. It's going to shift the culture, and we're going to see a lot of changes in attitudes in the coming decades.
And I think too, like, I guess to what you were saying earlier as well, like, I feel like there needs to be like a regulation change in order to like allow trans men to like be able to take testosterone and play the sport, right? So like, yeah,
you can play it on the men's side.
Okay, with being on testosterone? Okay.
Yes,
but it's not on the women's side.
There actually are some. So the league that I played in was called the National Women's Hockey League, and they came out with, I believe it was the first transgender policy in professional team sports when I came out.
Oh, wow.
They made it. They
That's
made
so
it with,
cool.
it was really quite groundbreaking. And then they changed their names to the Premier Hockey Federation.
Yes. Okay.
And a few years later, they came out with an adapted transgender policy, and it was the first time that non-binary athletes were mentioned in a transgender policy.
God, what?
Yeah, and they talked about that trans men could, or non-binary people that are assigned female at birth, could take testosterone. It just has to be in consultation with the league and in consultation with a doctor.
Okay.
To see what those kind of competitive advantages. I don't know. Nobody can see this, but I am doing air quotes right now. But we'll get into that later about testosterone not being like the magic hormone to make an athlete.
100%.
Yeah, but so there are, but that league is now it was bought out by it's called the Professional Women's Hockey League, the PWHL.
Okay,
there's so many. I know my mind is spinning, but they were bought out. So now there is one league for women professional hockey players. Yes. But I haven't heard anything about them taking along that trans policy and that non-binary policy. So I'm not sure what the PWHL's transgender and non-binary policy is as of now. But the league that I played in did make more inclusive policy.
Well, I'm so happy to hear this, because I think that's so awesome. And like, because I think it opens up such a larger conversation, like, for like, I guess I do a lot of talks with like kids and like, talking about being non-binary. And it's like one of the most common questions, 'cause I think like sports are such a big thing for kids, is like, well, which team would you play on? Right. And I'm like, like, I don't know. I don't know what, if I was a non-binary youth, like, like what I would choose in that situation, or like why. I guess I have to make a choice, but it's like, I don't know. I think it's such a complicated conversation, because it's like, are you going to create a non-binary league, or I don't know, like what is the solve in this situation? I'm not sure, so totally. Maybe it's like a co-ed situation or whatever, like, I don't know. So I think it's just like, there is obviously like more growth that needs to happen, in these conversations around this, but I don't know what the solve would be.
It's tough. I'm writing a book right now on trans inclusion in sport, and we're talking to non-binary athletes as well. And the rate of non-binary athletes that don't participate in sports because they don't know where they're going to fall in. Like it's a group that has been left out of the gender binary within sports, because that's just the way it's been. That's the way it's been done. It's been broken up into male. It's broken up into female, and we haven't figured out a way to make it more inclusive for everybody. Like there are co-ed leagues and stuff which have been really great, and like especially with the younger ages.
Yes.
But we have to figure out where this arbitrary cutoff is to segregate genders when it could just be segregated on skill level.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think people
That's a really good point.
People are exploring different avenues. But again, it's still in its infancy, and it's going to be a long time before we see sports truly be a space that is inclusive for everybody, and is a place that can champion women athletes and stuff like that. So there's a lot of room for sports to grow. But yeah, non-binary athletes is a big topic right now.
Oh, love it. Now, before we wrap up, I want to talk about your book. I know you just mentioned it. So like, what I guess like led up to you wanting to write this book? And it's called Pink Light, right?
Oh, that's my film.
Oh, your film. I'm
that's
so
my
sorry.
Film.
Ah!
Yes. The book is called Let Them Play.
Let Them Play. Okay. I'm mixing them up. Okay. So what led you up to like writing Let Them Play?
Well, so I had been approached by a book agent when I first came out, and she was like, "Have you ever considered writing your memoir?"
Yes.
So I was like, "Oh, okay. That would be interesting." So I toyed around with the idea of that, had like a proposal, worked on that for a bit, and we shopped it around in the States. And I think like in the States, hockey isn't that big, and like I'm a Canadian, so there wasn't really a market for it to be picked up. And my sister is a journalist, so she really likes to write and things like that. So she knew I was doing that, and I was just talking to her, and I was like, I don't feel passionate about this. Like this process of writing, it's a slog, and I just don't know if I'm invested enough. And my sister, when I first came out too, she was like, you have a lot of influence right now to make a difference and to add more trans voices to this narrative, and to help not push, but to help people to help people be exposed to more trans people. And she was like, what if we wrote this together? Because I think that this is important. So we approached another agent out of Toronto, and she had the idea that it would be more of like a policy working book where it's sprinkled in with my narrative.
But such a good idea.
Yeah, but we're talking to non-binary athletes from all over the world, trans athletes from all over the world. We're talking to policymakers. We're talking to people that actually are opposed to it, organizations that are fighting to stop trans women from being able to participate in sports, and talking to parents, talking to young non-binary and trans youth. And it's turned into this amazing narrative and amazing space where all of these voices are being heard. We just handed in our first draft.
I can't wait to read it. This is so cool.
It'll be about a year until it comes out still. But
of course.
But my sister was really the advocate for this, and our agent Carly Waters came up with this amazing idea, and we pitched it, and we signed with an editor out of Boston called Beacon Press.
Amazing.
And it's been a year of doing this and becoming closer with my sister too. And she's learning more about the transgender experience. And it's so necessary right now, because sports is it was such an integral part of my life. It still is.
Totally.
And I would not be here without sports. I know that for sure.
Absolutely.
Like it saved my life. It saved so many people's lives from who we're talking to. And right now, that life-saving space is being taken away from so many youth, especially in the States. And it's just really devastating. And I was trying to think, what can I do? It was just such a helpless feeling. And I think the best thing that I can provide is education and just sharing stories, because I think storytelling is such a beautiful way for people to understand things that they wouldn't necessarily be open to learning. And so that's just what we've come up with. And I couldn't have done it without my sister. So it's been really, really eye-opening, but a really beautiful experience.
Well, I'm so excited for you. And I love that it's like lifting up so many voices and sharing so many other people's stories too. Because I think that's something that I think sometimes is forgotten is like we are a community and like there's so many different perspectives. And like I love that you're using like your influence to bring this beautiful group of people together to share it in the book. So so cool.
Great.
Where can people find you on social media?
Yes, people can find me on Instagram and Twitter.
Yes.
H Brown with an E on the end.
Yes, don't forget
the number 24 for that's my hockey number. I don't have a TikTok yet, but I think I'll make one. So stay tuned for that. But
totally.
Yeah.
And where can they watch your film, Pink Light?
Oh yes, we're in the process of getting funding for that. So we're gonna have a Kickstarter there.
Okay.
But check it out on my Instagram. I'll be posting a lot about that. And you can find ways on how to support our film, because it's a very heavily trans and non-binary creative team behind it. And it's a story about a trans man at 2 different stages of his life: pre-transition, post-transition. So and it's a happy story, because lots of trans stories that we're seeing in the media, especially, that focuses on like transition, trauma. Yeah. But this is a hopeful story that is quite fun as well. So
oh my gosh, I can't wait. Hopefully it premieres at Inside Out or something.
Oh yeah, we'll see.
I love it. Well, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for coming on the podcast. You're a gem.
Thanks for having me. It was great. Lots of fun.